Detective Inspector Elara Voss sat alone in the dimly lit corner of Eldermore's village library, the only sanctuary where she could spread out the fragile, yellowed pages of the widow's ledger. The fog pressed heavily against the tall, stained glass windows, dulling the outside world to a muted grey, muffling the usual clatter of village life. Here, in this hush, the ledger whispered its secret cryptic entries of inheritances, dates, and names that blurred the boundaries of time. The ink had faded unevenly, as if deliberately resisting the passage of years. Much like the villagers themselves, who refused to age beyond 40. Iliara's eyes scanned the ledger, tracing a pattern that gnawed at the edges of her reason. Several entries detailed inheritances that seemed impossible properties and possessions, passing hands across decades without clear heirs, some names recurring in different centuries as if the same person lived multiple lifetimes. Her fingers paused on an entry marked with a faint, nearly illegible note: "Dispute resolved, blood price paid." The words sent a chill down her spine. The silence was broken by a soft knock at the heavy oak door. Elara looked up to see Margaret Langley, the village's enigmatic guardian of secrets, standing framed by the dusky light. Margaret's pale skin gleamed faintly, her silver-streaked dark hair falling in elegant waves over a vintage black dress that seemed a relic from another era. Her serene expression bore no hint of warmth. "Detective Voss," Margaret began, her voice smooth and unwavering, "there are truths in Eldermore that are better left undisturbed. The ledger is not just a record, it is a covenant. I advise you to cease your inquiries before you upset the delicate balance we have maintained for centuries." Elara met Margaret's steady gaze, refusing to be cowed. "The people of this village deserve to know the truth. I intend to find it, no matter the cost." Margaret's lips curved into a faint, almost sorrowful smile. "Then you must be prepared for the consequences." Later that evening, Elara sought out Thomas Graves and Sophie Whitlock in the village square. Thomas, the historian, was a wiry man with round spectacles perched precariously on his nose and a tweed jacket that smelled faintly of old books. Sophie, the innkeeper's daughter, stood beside him, her curly auburn hair catching the dim light as her bright eyes darted nervously around the square. They exchanged a glance heavy with unspoken tension before Thomas spoke in a low voice. "Eldermore has its ways, detective. The ledger is more than a book, it's a legacy. Dig too deep, and you risk unraveling more than just the past." Sophie's voice trembled slightly as she added, "Some secrets protect us, others imprison us." Elara nodded, feeling the weight of their words settle into her bones. The villagers' protectiveness was not merely stubbornness. It was fear of what the truth might unleash. The following days were a careful dance between discovery and discretion. At the village pub, Elara observed groups of villagers whose laughter was hollow, their eyes darting with suspicion whenever she approached. Conversations hushed, and glances flicked away as if she carried an invisible mark. The jovial atmosphere was a thin veneer stretched taut over simmering tension. One night, as rain pattered against the windows of her rented cottage, Elara returned to the ledger. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became. The ledger was not only a record of wealth, but a ledger of lives extended unnaturally. Trades made in shadows, and blood debts paid in silence. The inheritance disputes were not mere family squabbles, but battles for a secret that granted the impossible immortality at a terrible cost. Yet, with each step closer to the truth, the village seemed to shrink away from her. Doors once open tightened shut. Friends became strangers. The ledger, a fragile book of paper and ink, had awakened something far more formidable, a collective will to protect what should have been buried. Ilara's resolve hardened. She would not be deterred, even as the fog thickened and the village's protective silence grew more suffocating. Beneath Eldamore's picturesque facade, a darkness thrived, and she was determined to bring it to light. But Margaret's warning echoed in her mind. Some truths come with a price, and in Eldamore, that price might be more than Ilara was willing to pay. As the night deepened, Ilara closed the ledger and looked out into the swirling mist that clung to the village's ancient stone walls. Somewhere beneath the surface, the secret waited, waiting for her to uncover it, or for her to be swallowed by the shadows that guarded it. With a final glance at the fading candlelight, Ilara whispered to herself, "No more hiding." Outside, the fog thickened, swallowing the village in silence once again, as Eldamore held its breath. The evening fog clung obstinately to the crooked rooftops of Eldamore, as Detective Inspector Ilara Voss stood in the quiet, cluttered sitting room of Evelyn Harper's old cottage. The air was thick with the scent of old paper, wood smoke, and something faintly metallic that Ilara couldn't immediately place. Her fingers hovered over a loose floorboard near the hearth, a subtle irregularity she had noticed during her earlier meticulous search. With a shallow breath, she pried the board aside, revealing a narrow, dust-choked staircase descending into darkness. The house seemed to hold its breath as she pulled a small flashlight from her coat pocket, clicking it on with a soft snap. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating the steep steps that disappeared into a cramped cellar below. The silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the distant creak of settling wood and the soft whisper of the fog pressing against the window panes. Ilara's heart beat steadily, calm, methodical, but charged with the thrill of discovery. She descended carefully, each footfall muffled by decades of dust and neglect. At the bottom, the air was colder, damp and stale, wrapping around her like a shroud. Against one wall stood a sturdy wooden table, layered thick with dust and strewn with the detritus of a forgotten life. Brittle parchments, faded photographs, and a small leather-bound book with a cracked spine. Kneeling, Ilara swept away decades of dust with the sleeve of her coat, revealing elegant, looping handwriting on the yellowed parchment. The pages told a story that sent a chill racing down her spine, an account of a pact forged centuries ago between the village's founding families. A pact promising escape from death itself, a form of immortality granted in exchange for a price too terrible to name outright. The ledger entries matched the names and dates, connecting generations of villagers who had vanished without explanation, replaced by others who bore the same youthful faces year after year. Her breath hitched as she unfolded a faded photograph showing a group of stern-faced villagers, their eyes unnervingly familiar. She recognized Margaret Langley among them, her ageless face serene and inscrutable even in the black and white image. The weight of the revelation settled heavily on Ilara's shoulders. The village's eerie timelessness was no mere coincidence, it was a curse, a carefully guarded secret maintained through silence and shadows. She understood now why the villagers had been so protective, so fearful of her questions. The ledger was more than a record, it was a chain binding them all. Suddenly, a creak echoed from the floorboards above, sharp and deliberate. Ilara froze, the beam of her flashlight trembling slightly in her grip. Footsteps, soft, measured, approaching. Someone knew she was here. Her pulse quickened as she packed the parchments carefully into her bag. The game had changed. The watchers of Eldamore were closing in. She ascended the stairs with cautious speed, the fog outside swirling like a living entity, cloaking the cottage in its spectral embrace. Ilara's mind raced with questions and fears. How many had paid the price of this pact? How many more lives lay buried beneath the surface of this quaint village? As she stepped back into the sitting room, the door creaked open slowly, and a shadow loomed in the threshold. Ilara's eyes met those of Margaret Langley, whose pale face was framed by silver-streaked dark hair, her gaze both calm and commanding. "You should not have come here," Margaret said softly, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. Ilara swallowed hard, the enormity of the secret pressing down on her like the fog outside. "I need to know the truth," she replied, steady despite the growing dread. Margaret's eyes gleamed with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "Some truths are too dangerous to reveal. The price of immortality is paid in silence and sacrifice." The room seemed to close in around Ilara as the reality of Eldamore's legacy settled over her. She stood at the precipice of a truth that could shatter the fragile peace or doom them all to live in shadows forever. With a final, lingering look, Margaret stepped back into the night, the door clicking shut behind her. Ilara was left alone, heart pounding, the ledger's ancient secrets burning in her hands. Outside, the fog deepened, swallowing the village whole. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen eyes watched and waited. The pact had been revealed, but the story was far from over. Detective Inspector Ilara Voss found herself seated in the dim back room of the village inn, the soft glow of a single candle flickering against the peeling wallpaper. Outside, the rain whispered against the window panes, its rhythm steady but unpredictable, much like the secrets she sought to uncover in Eldamore. Opposite her, Sophie Whitlock shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her auburn curls catching the candlelight as she leaned forward, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I don't like all this, Ilara," Sophie confessed, eyes darting toward the door as if expecting shadows to creep in. "People here guard their secrets the way some guard their lives. But you ask questions, dangerous questions." Ilara nodded, her sharp gaze steady, "And those questions might be the only way out. But I need help. You've heard things, stories, rumors, anything that might connect the ledger to what's really happening here." Sophie hesitated, biting her lower lip before speaking. "There's talk, quiet talk, about old debts and bloodlines, about the pact your ledger hints at, but most are too afraid to say it outright. They fear Margaret Langley. She's like a shadow that never leaves this place." The name hung heavy in the room, a palpable weight that even the flickering candles seemed reluctant to disturb. Later that evening, Ilara found herself in the study of Thomas Graves, a room thick with the musk of aged paper and worn leather. Shelves bowed under the weight of dusty tomes and brittle manuscripts, each a testament to the village's long and tangled history. Thomas adjusted his round spectacles and regarded Ilara with a mixture of caution and reluctant respect. "You're asking the questions no one else dares," he said quietly. "But knowledge here is double-edged. It can free or destroy. I've spent years balancing on that edge." Ilara leaned forward, voice low. "What can you tell me about the ledger entries that suggest a cover-up? About the villagers who might still be living with ghosts from centuries past?" Thomas sighed, a tremor of conflict flickering through his eyes. "There are those who believe the secret is a necessary sacrifice. Others see it as a curse. I'm torn between my duty to protect our legacy and the truth you seek. But you deserve to know more." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden knock, firm, deliberate. The door creaked open, revealing Margaret Langley standing with serene authority, her pale face framed by silver-streaked hair. The room seemed to chill instantly. "Detective," Margaret said smoothly, her voice as calm as the fog outside. "You tread on dangerous ground. Eldamore is not a place for prying eyes. You must cease this investigation, for your own good and for the villagers. Elara met her gaze unwaveringly. I'm here because there are truths that can no longer be hidden. Secrets that have held this village captive for too long. Margaret's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. Some truths come at too high a price. As Margaret left, the tension in the room lingered, thick as the fog that pressed against the windows. Later, walking through the mist-cloaked streets, Elara felt the weight of the villagers' watchful eyes. The church bells tolled in the distance, a haunting reminder of time's passage, or lack thereof, in Eldamore. She knew the path ahead was fraught with peril. Alliances were fragile, and adversaries powerful. Yet, in the uneasy partnership forged with Sophie and Thomas, Elara glimpsed a slender thread of hope. The ledger's secrets beckoned, and the delicate balance of the village's future hung in the balance. With a steadying breath, Elara pulled her trenchcoat tighter and disappeared deeper into the fog. Determined to unravel the darkness that had long enveloped Eldamore. The village hall, usually a place of quiet town meetings and gentle debates, now buzzed with a charged atmosphere. Elara stood near the center, her sharp eyes scanning the diverse faces turned toward her, some curious, others hostile. The fog outside seeped through the stained glass windows, casting muted colors that danced over the gathered crowd like ghostly warnings. This ledger, Elara began, holding the worn book aloft, is not merely a record of inheritances. It is a testament to secrets that have shaped Eldamore for centuries. To deny its significance is to deny the truth that binds this village together and holds it prisoner. A murmur rippled through the audience, quickly swelling into voices raised in protest. Thomas Graves stepped forward, adjusting his round spectacles nervously. "Detective Voss," he said cautiously, "many here believe that some truths are best left buried. The ledger is more than paper and ink. It is a legacy of pain, sacrifice, and survival. To expose it fully could unravel the very fabric of our community." Elara nodded, understanding the weight of his words, but resolute. "I am here to uncover the facts, not to judge. But silence has allowed injustice and fear to fester. We cannot move forward without confronting what lies beneath this fog." From the back of the room, a figure rose, graceful and composed, with a presence that commanded attention despite the tension. Margaret Langley's pale face was serene, yet her eyes flickered with a warning fire. "Detective," she said softly, her voice cutting through the din, "you tread on dangerous ground. Eldamore's peace is fragile, maintained by trust and unspoken understandings. If you continue down this path, you risk not only your safety but the destruction of everything we have preserved." Elara met Margaret's gaze steadily. "I respect your desire to protect the village, but protection built on deception can only last so long. The ledger's secrets cannot remain hidden forever." A hush fell over the room as the reality of the conflict crystallized. Allies and adversaries took subtle sides. Whispers began to spread like wildfire. Sophie Whitlock, standing beside Thomas, bit her lip anxiously, her usual bright eyes clouded with worry. "This isn't what I imagined when I hoped to find the truth," she whispered to Thomas. "I fear what this division will do to us all." Thomas sighed, his wiry frame tense. "We are caught between preserving a legacy and embracing a future. Neither path is free of sacrifice." Later, as the meeting disbanded, Elara found herself alone in the village in the walls, heavy with the scent of damp wood and burning peat. She stared out the fogged window, the mist swirling like memories she could not shake. The weight of her sister's unsolved fate pressed against her chest, mingling with the burden of Eldamore's dark past. Her fingers trembled as tears welled in her eyes. "I can't fail here," she whispered to the cold night. "Not again." As dawn crept over the horizon, the village remained divided, some clinging fiercely to their secrets, others trembling at the cost of truth. Ilara knew the lines had been drawn, and the coming days would test her resolve in ways she had never anticipated. Outside, the fog thickened once more, swallowing Eldamore's streets and secrets alike, a silent witness to the fractures forming within. With every step forward, Ilara felt the shadow of the ledger grow heavier, and the stakes of her investigation more perilous. The village's fragile peace teetered on the edge of collapse, and the choice between exposing the truth or preserving the silence loomed impossibly large. But Ilara was no stranger to impossible choices, and she would face this one, no matter the cost. The night settled again, but in Eldamore, the calm was only a prelude to the storm gathering beneath the fog. The library was silent except for the soft rustle of pages and the occasional sigh from Detective Inspector Ilara Voss. She sat hunched over a heavy tome, its fragile pages yellowed with age, the dim glow of the fireplace casting long shadows across the room. Opposite her, Thomas Graves adjusted his round spectacles and leaned closer, his voice a low murmur as he shared what little he knew of Eldamore's long-forgotten past. "The ledger is more than just records," Thomas said quietly. "It's a tapestry of our history, threads of loyalty, betrayal, and secrets that have shaped this village beyond what we dare admit." Ilara nodded, her sharp eyes scanning yet another faded entry. The names, dates, and cryptic notes hinted at relationships and events that defied ordinary explanations. Several families were linked not only by blood but by dark pacts and whispered accusations. The original murder, long concealed behind layers of silence, seemed to pulse at the heart of it all. Her mind drifted as Thomas recounted the oral traditions passed down through generations. Tales of forbidden liaisons, secret meetings beneath the ancient oaks, and the shadow of a pact made in desperation. As the fire flickered, Ilara imagined the village centuries ago, a place much like today, yet gripped by fear and desire. In a sudden moment of clarity, a flashback unfolded in her mind's eye. She saw a young woman, her face pale and determined, slipping through the mist to meet a figure cloaked in darkness. Their whispered promises were laden with urgency and dread. A betrayal was brewing, one that would echo through time and bind the villagers in chains of immortality and silence. Later, in the cozy warmth of the inn, Sophie Whitlock sat beside Ilara, her fingers nervously twisting a worn locket. "People don't talk much," Sophie admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I've heard things. Stories about love that couldn't be, debts unpaid, and a secret some would kill to keep." Ilara listened carefully, sensing the girl's mix of hope and fear. It was a glimpse into the human heart beneath the village's eerie stillness, a reminder of the cost of the pact they all shared. The night grew colder, and as Ilara stepped outside, the fog curled around her like a living thing. From the shadows of the forest, Margaret Langley emerged, her serene expression masking the weight of centuries. "Some truths," Margaret said softly, "are like the mist. They obscure, protect, and sometimes suffocate. Be careful what you seek, detective. There are costs to unveiling what time has concealed." Ilara met her gaze, feeling the tension of their unspoken battle. The ledger was not just a record of past events. It was a key to understanding the village's cursed immortality and the sins that anchored it. Back in her room, Ilara pored over the fragments of history, the voices of Eldamore's past whispering warnings and revelations. The more she learned, the more the line between past and present blurred, The betrayals and desires of centuries ago were alive in the fog, shaping every face she saw, every secret she uncovered. As dawn crept through the misted windows, Elara realized that, to solve the mystery, she would have to confront not only the village's dark legacy but the human cost of eternal life itself. The echoes of the past were calling, and she could no longer ignore their haunting song. The ledger's secrets were unraveling, and with them, the fragile peace of Elara's journey into the village's heart of darkness was only just beginning, and the shadows whispered that some truths might be too terrible to bear. With a final glance at the fading night, Elara steeled herself. The past had many faces, and tonight she would meet them all.